Go live with Amanda. I'm back. Just waiting. Oh, here she is. Yay! Hello.
Okay. Oh, so the sound is not on my earplugs anymore. Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good. As long as we don't have like an echo, then it's grand.
No, we're good, yeah. I know. Austin would be about getting a proper microphone. I'm like, calm down. It's the first live.
Just a casual chit chat.
I was expecting you to come in as a pro now, though, so that's good. It's good that your headphones didn't work. So I guess let's just get straight into it. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your background?
Yeah, of course. Just in case I have a Larry sleeping on me, my dog, so just in case she pops in. So I'm born in Switzerland. I'm Amanda, born from a French father and an English mother. And so I lived in Geneva and London in my teens. And when I came back from London to Geneva, I just started boxing. So I was about 15. Did a few fights, ended up winning the Swiss championship title as a junior, and continued boxing until I was about 22. And I was at university. And in Europe, like, you have the possibility to change, like to go for a semester in another country. So I was always attracted by the Middle East, and I wanted something completely different from Switzerland. I was really tired of like the very conservative culture and very conservative people. So and conservative art. I was studying art. So I just decided to go to the Middle East. I had the choice between Beirut and Jerusalem. And Beirut was a film school, so I couldn't go there, so I decided to go randomly to Jerusalem. And over there, I wanted to continue boxing. I went to a few gyms here and there, just wasn't great. Tried an MMA gym, and because they knew that I was boxing, they decided to put me against like 90 kg guys. Ended up being completely smashed, going to university with like black eyes and everything. Everyone looking at me like, what the fuck are you like doing? So I just didn't do anything for 2 years. And I had a friend from Switzerland who went from boxing to jiu-jitsu. And I was like, oh man, that looks really, really cool. It took me two years to build the courage to kind of find like a gym.
Yeah. Asked
one of my friends over there, like, let's just go try it, and absolutely fell in love with it. I felt like I was 10, just play fighting with my brother again, you know. And then spent 4 years in total in Israel, and 2 years then just doing jiu-jitsu over there. Kind of abandoned my studies. Like, I finished, obviously I got my degree, but I was just like more interested in doing jiu-jitsu. And then I moved from Jerusalem to London, went to a gym over there, did my master's as well at the same time. So I stayed there for 2 years, and then met the love of my life, who was Irish. And as we met, he was like, oh, well, I'm going back to Ireland. So I was like, okay. We did like 1 year long distance, London and Dublin. And then I just made the move to Dublin because, again, I was fed up with London. Nothing was working out over there. And like, I had heard that, like, I had been doing backs and forths, training here a bit in Dublin. And I was like, oh my God, this is one of the best gyms ever. So I just made the move to Dublin and met you, the other love of my life.
That we would have been still long distance with Sean, only for you met me, so you needed to be here, obviously.
Yeah. Of course.
I didn't MMA, actually. That's gas.
It was, I mean, I'm sure I would have enjoyed it in another context, but like first class, I'm like, yeah, you know, I do a bit of boxing. Oh, okay, go spar against that guy who's 90 kilos. And he was just punching me in the face with you know, MMA gloves, not like boxing gloves. And I was like, you know, that's not for me. I've had enough getting punched in the face. So that was that. But
games, I'd always, people would say, do you do any martial arts? And I'd say, I've done a little bit. That would be the extent of my answering of any questions, because otherwise they're like, oh, you have a bit of an ego, do you? You think you're so
Lesson learned. Yeah, but at least, you know, like you properly went into it. Like you had like an amazing kickboxing career, and you did MMA fights as well and karate fights as well. Like you were just all over the place. I was just like, nah, no. Okay.
Which, and so were you making weight then since a teenager, basically, then for boxing competitions? When you were boxing,
Yeah.
everyday weigh-ins, or had they brought them in yet at that stage?
I was trying to remember. So because the Swiss Championship was very small, it was all in one day. If I remember correctly, I think it was on the day weigh-in.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this live like last week, and actually before I started boxing, I used to do gymnastics in Switzerland. It's a Swiss type of gymnastics. It's only in Switzerland, and I didn't have to make weight for this, but I remember like thinking, oh, I have to eat pasta first thing in the morning if I have that competition. And so my mom, that was the thing with my mom, like she would prepare pasta in the morning. And now that I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, this is probably the worst thing that I would never do this today, like eat pasta first meal in the morning. But then making weight, boxing, like I can't remember it being that hard, but I was definitely obsessed with it. I was checking my weights all the time. I probably only needed to kind of cut off like the sugar to make weight really at that age. But then as I was growing, it became harder and harder, and definitely in jiu-jitsu, that was when I was faced with like terrible issues and like eating disorders of all kind. Yeah, it just was terrible. So like I don't remember that much being being hard. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I was boxing.
Well, people that grow up making weight, and we know like the research shows that the earlier someone starts a martial art, the more likely they are to do extreme weight cuts later in life. And I've done it too, where you still trying to make the weight that you made when you were a teenager. So you're like, oh well, like, because I used to kickbox at 56 kilos, which is like an outrageously lightweight for like a 5'6" person. But so you're constantly thinking, and even I remember when I started jiu-jitsu, because I was used to MMA, which is day before weigh-in, so you can play around a lot more then, and just thinking, okay, so I'll obviously do jiu-jitsu at like 59 in the gi, and it's like, absolutely not. I think like you can't be any messing with your body when you're going to step on the mats as soon as you weigh in, you know.
Exactly. No, it's really insane, and like it became worse and worse as I was going through the belts. Like as much as I don't have any memories really of boxing, BJJ has scarred me for life, really. So I know that I started training and I was about 62. So like 4 weeks into my first 4 weeks, I had a competition like basically 1 month after I started.
Yeah.
I just weighed in as like I didn't do any weight cuts. I was just like, okay, that's the weight I'm at. My coach was like, okay, so we'll just put you in that category. So these local competitions weren't really important, but like as I progressed through the belts and everything, like it was just awful. I wasn't cutting that much at the beginning, but I was depriving myself from like a few sweets here and there, and then just binging after. So the worst belt for me was the blue belt. I remember losing about 8 to 10 kilo in a week once for like my first Grand Slam or something, the London Grand Slam. I was eating maybe 2 omelets with like literally nothing and a bit of avocado. I was doing hot yoga, 3 training sessions per day of jiu-jitsu, and then going to the gym for cardio. And that was just crazy. And I did not perform that day. I was barely there. People had to call me like, they're calling you to go on the mat. I was like, oh, okay. I had literally no energy at all. And the first thing that I would eat after that is like 12 donuts, you know.
Yeah. What age would you be in? Early 20s, probably?
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So that would have been like, 7 years ago, 7 or 6 years ago. It was just absolutely awful.
People start cutting, so they go into jiu-jitsu, like, which is great. Your coach is like, this is what you weigh jumping, which is that is what it should be in my mind, especially at white belt level, because there's no advantages to be had at white belt level. The only advantage in white belt is if someone has done another sport and they have a bit of bodily awareness potentially, but other than that, Wild West, and there's really no need to be cutting weight. But then you know, you just start. But then the more extreme the weight cut, the more extreme the bounce back afterwards, which is what happens to people. And then you get into like a binge restrict cycle, which is really unhealthy. But then every time it's a kilo, so you're walking around at 62 and then you do some terrible cut, then you're just walking around at 63 and then you're walking around at 64. And by the time a year has passed, but also if you've just started jiu-jitsu, you're building new muscle that's not there. So you're putting on muscle. And I remember particularly when you and I started lifting together and you were stacking on muscle like a Russian power lifter.
I still carry the walk now, walking like a Russian powerlifter.
And you were kind of like, I've never been this heavy, but I'm really lean. This is so bizarre. And there's just this thing in martial arts that it's like moving up a weight class is a failure of some description instead of just going with your body and like you delighted with your new muscle going, yeah, take me into the next division, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm learning with you now, you know, that it's like it's healthy weight that I'm putting on. And like it was really hard for me to transition from featherweight to light. So that happened like in the summer where I got my purple belt. In September I had a competition in Geneva and I was like, I can't make weights. And Sean was like, and you were like, just go and do light. And it was so hard because it's exactly that. I feel like a failure. I think it's different when it's like kickboxing or boxing where there's actually punching in the face and there is strength, like proper strength involved. I would maybe push for a light cut or something, but if it's BJJ, like no way, go fight at the weight that you're at. Like I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Like
of course the person that's had breakfast and has had food for the last week before the jiu-jitsu competition is definitely going to like win. Like at the higher belts when the skill discrepancies are so slight, the advantage is in feeding yourself, and especially because we know as the fights go on, they're only going to get harder. So someone in that like depleted state that you're talking about, like that might have dehydrated slightly and that might have depleted their carbohydrates, they may survive their first fight, but by fight 2, 3, 4, they're going to start dwindling, and that's when the champ they're meeting the best in the division, you know.
Exactly. I remember you talking about one of the hardest cuts that you had done, and then you were like, oh no, I'm not doing that anymore. That kind of changed your mind. Yeah, that was like,
yeah, the joy gets sucked out of your, like, you know, especially, and most people and the people that I will be talking to on Instagram are hobbyists. They're not trying to make a living out of jiu-jitsu, and you can kind of lose sight of that, and you're putting your health on the line. And I think conversations need to be had about moving up a weight class isn't a failure, and people think if you've had to move up it's because you're fat or you haven't dieted well. It's like just because your body's in a different season and your priorities might be different, or you might have grown some muscle, which is to be celebrated, especially as women, because we lose it on the other side of menopause. So I don't like anybody starving away their muscle, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. And it was exactly that. I just started lifting properly with you, especially that summer. And then, yeah, I couldn't make featherweight anymore, but I was so lean. Like like, you know, I tell you all the time, I have this vein that comes out when I'm losing weight, and I still have it now, and I'm now a medium weight, you know. And it's so funny to see your body being lean, but you just putting on weight. Like psychologically, it's really, really hard because it's exactly what you're saying. You feel like a failure, and you're like, oh my God, I'm fat and everything. But then you're able to perform really well, you know. And it's like, it's just such a mindfuck. It's so annoying for women.
And like you eat well. Like your tendency is towards good food. You know, you've got a good palate for nutritious food, and so like it's the association with being in a heavier weight class with that you like eat like a pig or something like that. You're just fueling your sport and you're fueling your life, you know. And then the relief, obviously you went over to Pans there and you were pretty much on weight leaving Dublin, and then you had some tough fights and you got through them. And like had you been on a tough weight cut, even flying to America would be a nightmare. Like I done a few flights I was dehydrated because they used to do this cruel thing in kickboxing where you'd have to weigh in when you landed. Like you'd kind of land in the hotel, the team hotel, and you'd register and do your weigh in. But then you did have to weigh in again if you made it to the second day of competition, because we had every day weigh in. So that weigh in counted for your first fight. But if you made it to the second day of the competition, you'd have to weigh in again, which would normally be 2 days later. Or if you got a bye, you had to weigh in before you fought again. So I flew to some countries with a bloody sauna suit on under my clothing on the plane, having been in the sauna for a few hours beforehand. And you know, you're on a flight and it's bad enough. Like I don't even like a croissant with ham and cheese on it, but when you're on a Ryanair flight and all you smell is ham and cheese croissant. You're like, maybe I'll have a ham and cheese croissant. That smells delicious. But then try doing that when you haven't had water in 18 hours or probably food in a day, and you've got a stupid plastic sauna suit under your clothes, and you like that, you have to ask yourself, and I'm like, this is my hobby that I used to love. In what world is this okay, you know? But like, I'm in this weight class. If I move up, everybody will know I've moved up. They'll all think I'm a pig, like some sort of a, like maybe I'm not fit if I can't make the weight, which is, it's actually the opposite. You feel so fit when you've fueled your body and you're well fed.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also the space that it takes up in your brain, like the weight cut is insane. And since I've been working with you, like I can suddenly think about techniques and study my opponents and think about what I'm going to do in the fight instead of just thinking about my weight, thinking about losing weight. And then I go on the scales and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I did it. But then, oh fuck, like I have to fight. What am I going to do? What's my plan? And it's just like, it's ridiculous.
That's what,
but now, like,
and it's I have a big problem with that with MMA fighters that have a day before weigh-in, because trying to get them to eat well after weigh-in before fighting to fuel the fight, like they often think, and I used to be the same myself, once they've made weight they used to think they'd win. Like we would say, oh, that's the hard part done, you know, you made weight, that's the hard part done, fighting is fun, fighting is easy. But like you see so many, and it blows my mind even now when I'm at kind of weigh-ins and I see other fighters and they step off the scale and they have like a chicken fillet roll and Luke is saying, and I'm like, oh my God, I know they're after sweating off nearly 10% of their body weight in the last few hours. And I'm like, you know, you're never, they're either going to be on the loo for the night or vomiting, or, you know.
Exactly that. I in the Swiss team that I'm at, if some are looking, I'm really sorry. But like a lot of them, so we all weigh in, it's the same system. So we weigh in the day before, and most of them are just going to go for pizza after. And I'm just like, what are you doing? Your poor body, like it needs, you know, I don't know, vegetables and, you know, there's some good protein to function tomorrow. Like you're just basically like killing your body by just eating pizza, and you have to fight the next day. I just find it insane. But
big pit. Save the celebrations until after you've won the competition, maybe.
Exactly. And that's another thing that I'll do. I don't have these celebratory meals anymore. Like I will, if I feel like having a croissant or whatever, I will. But I'll make sure that at least the first meal after will be nutritious, like full of veggies, full of like protein. If I do want a little cake at the end, then that's grand. But I want to like thank my body for everything that it's enabled me to do today and fight, whether I win or lose. Like it's a machine, and I want to feed it the right stuff. So yeah,
great attitude. But it's true, because but I find with fighters, the way I unpack it with them is they often have cravings during cut. They're like, oh, I just can't. But it's because they've deprived themselves too much. They usually have underfed, and then the more deprived you are in the weight cut, the more the binging on the other side is, because you have, like, I used to keep a list on the notes app in my phone of all the foods I missed during a cut. And I'm going to have to this, I have to that. And then the reality was, after the fight, generally I just didn't want half of that stuff. It was more just because I knew I couldn't have it. I was dying for like things I don't even like. Like my parents' house is a huge problem for me, because they have, when you open the fridge, where the vegetable drawer is, that's their bloody chocolate drawer. And like we don't keep much chocolate in our house because laziness will always win. So I'm always like, if I want some chocolate, I have to go and get it. So it's like, which do I want more, to be lazy or to go and get the chocolate, you know? But my parents always have it, and I just, without even thinking, I'm just in the fridge with my head in that drawer. I wouldn't normally eat, but once you're depriving yourself, that's how it happens. And I think one of the questions that came in actually was on yours. It was on how do you cope with cravings. And there are a few things, if it's genuine cravings, there's a few supplements that can help with cravings. Or I used to be like, you know, have some dark chocolate, or you could have like a fruity tea if you were looking for something sweet, but also just have a little bit of what you fancy. But unfortunately, people have it so tightly wound that they can't, or they've deprived themselves for so long. So if someone is having serious cravings during a cut, I would ask them to look at their cut, look at the calorie level, where they started from, where they set it to, and try and figure it out there. And generally, kind of what I say to my fighters is, if you're craving something, so say you want, say a donut, for example, you love a good donut, I would always say that, like, that's totally fine, but have a nutritious meal. And if you still want a donut, have the donut. That's no problem. You want the donut, you know. But it becomes a problem when you assign it like good and bad. Like obviously a donut would be not ideal calories. If you were short on calories, there would be more nutritious ones to get. But as soon as you take that off the table immediately, that's when you want it and all you can cope is. And what will happen is you will eat your lower calories that you assign for the week. Maybe you might last on it for 6 days, but then you're going to binge because you've been thinking about this bloody donut all week. And if you had just had it on Tuesday night, we would have just moved on with our lives. It would have been 200-300 calories or whatever. And then you just get on with your week and you stay on your calories. But when you remove everything, and that's the donut is all that you can think about, you're 100% going to buy an 8-pack of donuts and you're going to eat all of them. And then you're going to be frustrated because your weight's not going to go where you wanted it to. And then you're going to restrict yourself even more. And then the cycle just gets worse and worse.
100%. And I also feel that even when you have that piece of like donut or whatever, you don't even enjoy it that much, whether it's after or before. Like, first of all, I feel like shit if I'm eating any kind of gluten. So if I do have that donut, I'm feeling like shit. And then I feel like I'm kind of ruining my camp, you know, for whatever competition I have. Like, I want to feel good when I'm training. I don't want to be feeling like, oh, lethargic and like have my stomach bloated and everything. So I try to avoid like these kinds of food anyway. But I have a terrible sweet tooth. So I do have my chocolate. Like, I'll have my dark chocolate with a little sea salt in it. And if I feel like it, I'll have some. But I also realize that when I'm like cutting all the sugar and gluten, because that's what I do, just because gluten doesn't suit me, I don't have these cravings so much. There's some days where I actually feel like I'm forcing myself to have that chocolate, that piece of chocolate, but I don't actually want it.
Yeah.
So like the more, I mean, it's really interesting how the mind works. Like
it's so psychological, and even with the scales, because you know, with people weighing themselves, and like I always say, the best way to frighten a fighter is to just ask them to step on a scale, so they're like just going to drop dead, like an unprepared for this weigh. And I didn't wear my light knickers. I didn't know you were going to weigh me. How dare you? You know. So, but it's again, I would be trying to say to people, that's factual. That is like what your body is against gravity in the earth. That's all it is. That you're no better of a human or worse of a human or better jiu-jitsu player or martial artist or worse because your weight didn't drop today. You know, if you're doing what you like, if you stick into the plan, it will drop one day. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But don't let it ruin your day. You know, when a conversation I have with a lot of fighters about like how often should they weigh themselves, and I'll always ask them like how do you deal with when you weigh yourself? Like, will it ruin your day? And if it will ruin your day, I say don't weigh yourself every day. If you're like me and you love the data, and some people it's good to see the fluctuations because it's never going to be like this, weigh yourself every day, you know. But if it's going to be like in the past, for me, it would have been what I would have say pressing the fuck it button. Like if I got on the scales thinking like I'm after eating salad for 3 days now, this is going to be down, and it wasn't, I'd be like, well, fuck it, I might have down. So it probably wouldn't have been a good idea for me to weigh myself then. But then when I look back at that was when I was in that binge restrict cycle. It was really unhealthy. So I think a lot of it stems from that. If you fuel yourself well from the beginning, all of these little things and these psychological wars kind of dissolve away.
Yeah, and I feel that they're just in our heads, you know. We feel that everyone is judging us, everyone is looking at, you know, how we're like looking at us physically and just judging us from every point of view, but nobody gives a shit.
No.
And the ones you do just shouldn't be in your circle. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody cares if you're going to do like super heavy or if you're going to do like feather instead of light feather. Nobody cares. Nobody is looking at you. Like everyone is just looking at your jiu-jitsu, and we're just like, at least for me, I'm just in my mind, I'm just like, oh my god, yeah, everyone is seeing me exactly as you were saying, as a failure. Everyone thinks that I'm just a pig because I'm putting on weight, but no, I'm just lifting, and you know, I'm just I'm just taking some time and respecting my body. And if my body wants to be at 68 kilos, then grand, that's fine. Yeah. If it wants to be at 63 kilos, it will be at 63 kilos, like whatever. My jiu-jitsu is not going to be worse or better because I'm this weight or the other. Like, it will just be the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you think you got there? Like, how would you, because I know there's a lot of people stuck in that now, even when I was in it, and people would say to me, oh, I've stopped cutting weight, and I'd be like, how did you stop? You know, like, what do you think made it click in your head, or would you have any advice to people in that?
Honestly, meeting people like you who actually have the knowledge. No, but like, my education was just like, you know, Instagram and like a few websites here and there, and just my mix of how I do it. But when I actually met you and I started to lift and like just started to actually respect my body and stop caring about what people think, I was just like, okay, let's move from feather to light. I can't do feather anymore.
Yeah.
I fought very well in light, and now I'm transitioning from light to middleweight because that's where my body wants to go. And I'm doing fine as well. Like my jiu-jitsu is just not changing, and it's having the advice from someone professional and just someone kind of, you know, knocking your brain, being like, just, hey, like, it's fine. Like, you can eat properly, just stop a few, you know, sugary things here and there. Like, you were able to kind of guide me in a really nice way and respectful way, and now I'm just, yeah, respecting my body, you know, and like just giving it what it actually needs. So it's just a few tweaks here and there and guidance from someone who actually knows what they're doing. And there's so many people who talk on Instagram thinking that they know what they're doing, but like, no, you need to speak to someone who actually has a degree,
Yeah,
and who can guide you properly. Because I was hearing the other day, sorry, I'm not going to mention your name, but someone who did a cut and was drinking 10 liters of water every day for 2 weeks. That was the cut. And I was like, mate, like, you need to speak to someone, because this is actually detrimental to your health. And it wasn't a female, but like, if it was a female, this is affecting your fertility and stuff like that. So you gave me the knowledge, and I was just like, okay, I don't want to affect my fertility just in case I want to get pregnant in a few years. So,
but even,
yeah.
if you're drinking too much water and not replacing your salts, you're gonna get cramps. Your muscles aren't gonna work. You're gonna be, you know, you'll do a few bounces to warm up, but you get cramps in your calves. You know, there's so much wrong with drinking a static amount of water for 2 weeks straight as a water load. There's so much wrong with it being 10 liters also, but it's dangerous, and that's a big thing I see is people, and oftentimes it actually comes from well-intentioned teammates. So they're like, well, this is what I do. Like, I remember one time, one of the girls in East Coast was texting me from Euros, and she was a bit over it. She was asking for some advice kind of for the next couple of days. And one of the lads was like, oh yeah, so just eat oats. And I was just like, oh, that's really not good advice. Maybe that works for him, and that's great for him. But, you know, but thankfully she had the wherewithal to text me and be like, here, this is what I've been told. What should I do? But it is a minefield. But there's a lot of people as well I find online, and they actually like to make stuff seem very complicated. So I don't know if they want to make themselves sound intelligent, or like they have this secret formula to make him weight, and it's really basic and it's really simple, but it's like consistency. And that's what when I'm working with people, and you know, and I like them to tell me where they are, and I like to tweak where they are, instead of me coming in saying, you know, eat this at this time and this at this time and this at this time, because like, who knows what you're in the mood for in that day. You'd give them some principles, and then I'd be telling you to eat something that you like. You know, you've got a great palate for foods of the world. You know me, like curry sauce is a bit spicy for me, so I'm not going to advise you on your meals. I'm going to advise you on the proponents of them and maybe the time of them. But it's just really simple changes make the thing. And what I normally say to people that are kind of in that binge restrict cycle is, obviously, if you've a comp coming up, carry on as you are, or whatever, take some advice if you can. But afterwards, do 2 or 3 weeks where you're actually eating a good level of calories for your level of activity, and tell me how you're feeling, how you feel in training, how you feel during the day. Say you haven't had, you're not cranky, you're not giving out to everyone in your life, you're not resting between rounds, you know, and then you might see the light, and then you might be like, okay, I see what you're getting at, you know. And oftentimes with me, when I start working with people that have been doing that for years, the 2 things that come back is, I've never eaten so much food in my life.
Yeah.
And like, where am I going to find the time to eat all this food? But also my weight is dropping. It's crazy, you know. And I'm like, well, it's because you're nourishing your body, like you're training, you have the calories. And that's what, going back to the donut, if you're in the middle of something and you do have some sort of a craving, just have a little of what you want and then move on with your life, you know.
Exactly. And also what I loved about your approach is that you're not like, there is one way to do it and that's it. You're tailoring everything to everyone, because everyone is different and all of our bodies react differently to different types of food, and you're just tailoring it to us and making, like, just guiding us through what works for us. And I just love that, because there's no bro science where you're just, you know,
Yeah.
oh, this works and this works. No, it's not going to work for me. Eating oats like all day is not going to make me lose weight. So,
Oliver Twist. Um, but was there something you said there? But yeah, with the like the individualizing, it's because, and it's a big problem I think in the female health space in general, is that you know your body better than I do. So when I'm working with people, it's a collaboration, because like I'm just some blow-in. I've read some scientific papers, but I've done lots of cuts myself. But you've been in your body, and that's a big thing I think with women, and like empowerment. And you know, we go to the GP and they kind of tell us what's what, and but it's your body. So like if anyone is coming in and telling you something like Shiv, Shiv says, haha, Oliver Twist, she got my joke about eating porridge all day long. But yeah, you know your body best. So if someone is coming in and saying no, that like if you say to me, for example, like I feel really good on sweet potatoes after training. If I have a sweet potato, I recover really well. Or you're like, I'm the one going, no, sweet potatoes are terrible. Rice will be better. Like that's a ridiculous way of doing things. I'm like, oh, get them sweet potatoes in, you know.
100%.
So another one of the questions that came in was people talking about how do you cope with a weigh-in if you have your period coming up. Have you had to deal with that recently? We had that a couple of comps ago, did we?
Yeah, so basically, so I've never yet had my period on a competition day or the week. It was always the week before. And what I learned with you, and I'll just transition from what we were talking about now, is that I've learned to learn about myself and to know how my body works, because I just didn't know anything. I was just doing like, you know, eating 3 eggs a day, and of course I'm going to lose 10 kilos in a week. It's very easy, and this I know. But now I'm learning how my body reacts to different kinds of food, and the same with my period. So I'm just going to check where my period will be compared to the competition, and I'll know, just like I'll usually ask you, okay, how am I going to deal with my period being on this week and the competition being on the next week? And I know that, so because that's always been the way that I had my period the week before, that's when my weight just plateaus and I'm not losing weight for a week. And you're like asking me, the first thing that you ask me is like, where are you in your cycle? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm getting my period next week. And you're like, yeah, okay, so you'll be grand in 2 days. You're going to drop it. It'll be fine. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it does. That's what happens.
Yeah.
So then I don't stress anymore as well. And stress also usually makes me like just keep weight.
Yeah.
So I'm way more relaxed about everything, because I know that like I'm going to deal with it fine. I'm going to plateau for like a week, and then I'll just lose like 2 kilos in one night, just naturally.
Yeah. That's good. But I know that's the thing I find with people with saying about don't stress over your period, but like it's easier said than done. But like knowing your own body is where all the power lies. That's for everybody in the world. Like knowing, like, you know, I randomly jump up a kilo before, like the day before I get my period, but it'll drop down. Or you're saying, you know, your weight will stay the same in that high hormone week. And then generally for people in general that might be listening, if you're prone to like water retention or bloating, like some extra magnesium can help with that in that week, that like from day, say 21 to 28, let's just say we're working on a normal 28-day cycle, and adding some electrolytes into your water, because your sex hormones affect your body fluid balance. So that's why you might retain some water, because your salt levels might be off. So adding in some electrolytes, and then maybe there's ways like, you know, we had dandelion root tablets for you after a flight before, didn't we? Because you take on water on a flight, that can help flush out water naturally. So there are strategies if you know your period is coming up. And also with people that I work with, that's way kind of will jump up on their period and say if they are due their period the day or the day after day of competition, we will account for that in their calories kind of the 3 weeks previous. So we might like cut their calories slightly more to maybe try and get them down an extra kilo earlier than we would if they weren't due their period. So then they can play around with that on the week and not have to worry about it.
It's hard to be a woman, honestly. Like all of the things you have to take in consideration, guys, like you're so lucky.
I mostly work with women, but then the odd time I'll take on a man, and I'm just like, okay, do this. And they're like, okay. And they do exactly what I ask, because they don't have any emotion attached to food. Mostly men don't. Like women, like it cracks me up because women will say like things like, oh, but I love my, let's say Cocoa Pop. I love my Cocoa Pops in the morning, as if they like they've I say like, did you birth the Cocoa Pops? You know? Whereas like I have Cocoa Pops for breakfast. There's like mostly now, obviously that's a large generalization. But when men do what I ask, they just lose the weight. Like it's, and I'm just like, this is so easy. Maybe why don't I just work with men all the time?
Because it's boring. It's more interesting to work with intricacies. Yeah.
I mean, I like to pretend I birthed food too, so I get it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's okay. Just eat them after something, like not first thing in the morning.
But yeah, no, and it is, and that's why sometimes when even I overhear, because obviously I never offer people advice unless they ask for it, because there's nothing worse than that person that's trying to preach at you. So like sometimes I'll be on the mats in jiu-jitsu and I'll literally be trying to pick up a mat to crawl under it because of what I'm hearing being said and advice being passed between people. And but it's usually like good intention. It's people like, well, I tried this and I read this and I tried this and it really worked and I fought out of my skin and blah blah. And it's like great, but then at the same time you're like, oh Jesus, that is not going to help that person, please stop that. But you can't be the person going, stop it, that's wrong, you're wrong, you know. That's someone else.
I think like mostly it was also learning what the effects of food are on my body and what I'm actually doing to my body. Because if you're just putting a piece of chocolate in your mouth and that's it, like, and you don't think about it, then fine. But like when you actually learn all of the effects and that it has, and also on your long-term health and fertility and everything. And actually, I don't want to do that to my body. Like, yeah, I can't see everything that it's doing, but it's actually destroying it. And I don't want to do that. Like, I want to be, like you say often, you know, when you're 70, you want to be able to pick up your grandkids and you want to be able to walk normally and everything. And we don't really think about our 70s or even our 80s if we get there. And do you want to be a vegetable stuck in a wheelchair, or do you want to actually be, you know, able to walk and go, you know, yeah. So
a conversation I have with people a lot is because everybody says like they want to live till they're very old, and I say like I want to be alive until I'm very old. I don't want to be, but having been dead and collecting different tablets from my mid-70s, and like if I come down the stairs in the morning I can't go back up the stairs because it's too painful, and if I forgot something up there it's just there till I go to bed. I want to be alive into my old age, and kind of as martial artists we're doing terrible things to our body, so you have to try and minimize the damage that you're doing. Like nobody's getting out unscathed from training as often and as hard and everything, and especially as women in martial arts, because generally most of your training partners would be heavier men. So to try and protect it with the right levels of protein, the right level of nutrients. But I often wonder, does that come with age? Does that come with age? Because I think if you told me that at 23, I'd be like, well, you know, all I think about don't like, you know. And like now, as I'm like in my late 30s and I have a few kids and stuff, and like I have a sore knee when I run up the stairs, I'm like, God damn it, why? Or I put up a post earlier and Alice commented on it, that her weekly go-to thing was stretch, and I was like, oh, she's mocking me from the internet, you know.
It's so true. I mean, it's maybe a bit redundant, but we should absolutely get that kind of education at school, you know, and learn about all of this, because I'm sure that 10-year-old me would care about this. 20-year-old me, absolutely not. But like 10-year-old me, yeah, probably would have given a damn and would have given out to my mom for giving me pasta like before a gym competitions, you know.
Ego kicks in when we think we know everything about age 14 or so. We need to get the plans before the hormone. Okay, well, I don't think more questions that came in. Oh, one was about ovulation bloating. So the same thing would apply around ovulation bloating with regards to electrolytes and water and salt, because it's just a large dip in hormones, so that just affects your body water balance. So try and fix that yourself.
Yep. Fix your shit yourself.
But I think that's it then, unless there's anything else that you got in. I know there was some trolling from Sean, but we won't address that.
No, but maybe just the pill. The pill might have some effects as well. Like, I don't really know. I've only stopped the pill like 5 years ago. I started at 14, so I didn't know my body before that, like what it was like normally, and like it has changed a lot since I stopped the pill like about 5 years ago. But yeah, that might
help. It's hard.
Yeah.
asks a lot of people, like I had a conversation with someone the other day. They were asking about, had I ever missed a period from the extreme weight cuts I used to do, and my answer was I don't know, because I was on the pill at that stage. So you're not having a period when you're on the pill, you get a breakthrough bleed. So it masks things. Obviously we're not in the business of like, well, I'd love if nobody was on the contraceptive pill, to be honest, but also that might lead to some unplanned pregnancy, so we have to be careful with that, and people need to do what's right for them. But it does mask a lot of your body's rhythms that would allow you to know what's going on. But evidently in the literature, the psychological aspects during the month aren't masked by the pills somehow. So you can get that kind of the emotion, you know, that week in the month where you feel like you've just never done jiu-jitsu in your life, and everybody that touches you is trying to kill you, and you want to cry in the shower after, you know. So I think the pill doesn't protect you from that. But there's a people worry about kind of weight gain coming on and off, and all I say is you just need to give your body some time to regularize itself. And, you know, especially when you come off, we know a lot of people, because the pill does mask a lot of problems, they come off and their period doesn't come back at all, or they figure out there's been some stuff going on, they have to unpack it, and you're looking at like 6 to 9 months before things can settle back in. So if it's something that you're on the fence about, maybe look into it. But I know myself personally, as an athlete, I was never stronger and leaner than when I came off the pill as well. In my I came off. Again, I was put at it at 15 or 14 because I was getting a period every 2 weeks. But like, it's entirely normal for a teenager's period to be irregular. It's like, it's the exact same as menopause, you know, so it's the start of your fertility journey and the end. Both of those things involve irregular periods and hormones fluctuating in a crazy manner. So all these GPs out there that are just throwing kids on the pill to regulate their period need to really just go and read some research and some literature, because it's not the case.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's insane. And I think, like, it's in jiu-jitsu that I realized the amount of women who don't get their period. I was talking about it with the women who fight like a few weeks ago. It's insane. And like, there's something going on if you're not getting your period. Like, it shouldn't be a normal thing, and you shouldn't normalize it. Like you say often, it's your body telling you that, hey, like, something's wrong there. Like,
yeah, it's your report card. It's your monthly report card from your body as to how you
love that. Love that.
So, because you know yourself, if I've trained less, I might have a heavier period, or if I've, you know, if there's been like some antibiotics or some outrageous stress, it all affects it, and you kind of give it a month or two to settle before you would panic. I always say that, because generally, maybe sometimes if people have a weigh in, it might affect their periods. It might come a bit earlier, it might come a tiny bit late, and that's just a stress response. But it is your body's report card. But people think, I don't need a period, I'm not trying to get pregnant right now, it doesn't matter. But that is not the reality at all. Like, estrogen plays a role in a lot of the systems in your body, just protecting your bones, your heart health, your stroke risk. So if you're one of those people that thinks your period is an inconvenience during your athletic career, you really need to just think about that again. You know, I'll share a few posts after, like, mentioning the things that it's responsible for and the dangers in not getting it. And if your period has disappeared, you really need to work with a professional to try and get it back, basically.
Yeah, I think that's the word, like, work with a professional for everything that you're doing, basically.
And then obviously lean into the power, like, you know, well, there's a power with knowing your body, knowing the fluctuations, and you can use it to your advantage rather than seeing it as a large inconvenience. Because generally it's an inconvenience for people because they're having like terrible period cramps, or they're having really heavy periods or really long periods. And again, all those things are dysregulated menstrual cycle that can be addressed with lifestyle and some supplements and fixed. And then you get to a place where you have a normal enough period, which would be like relatively pain-free, between 3 and 4 days, like relatively medium flow. And then it's not even a thing. It's more just like, oh shit, did I remember to bring a tampon, or did I, you know, if I got my cup, or where is my menstrual cup, you know, rather than it being ruining your training or anything like that.
100%. There's someone asking if we're going to save the conversation. Oh yeah, Sylvia. I think we are. I think you are going to save the conversation.
Yeah, hopefully it just saves. I'll let you know.
Fingers crossed, guys.
Go on.
Yeah.
I'll let you go because you've got to go to Nogi training.
You too. It was lovely to speak to you, Lindsay. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Bye.
See everyone. Bye.